if you're going to change the mold in some capacity, it's not going to be a smooth thing that feels comfortable all the time. I ticked every box I thought would make me happy, and I was still struggling, and I thought there's really something wrong with me here. I think I had to have all the external success first to realize that that wasn't it. I used to think confidence would come from external success, and now I realize my confidence comes from recognizing that I can be with more and more of myself all the time. But if I recognize that it's okay for me to be with my fear, or be with my vulnerability, or be with my grief, then I'm not afraid to go out into the world and try new things.
I am joined right now by one of my, I want to say, brothers in mission. That's how I see you. That's how I see your devotion to the work itself. And that's why I kind of wanted to have you on the podcast to begin this conversation that I am so compelled to bring to the public about enheartenment, which is the practice of embracing your fullness. And I think I couldn't possibly start it without beginning with shadow integration. It's a shared passion that we have. And I see you as somebody doing your very best to embody it, to bring it out there, especially through your book coming out. I think the book just came out yesterday. Shadow Work is the main title. So it's an honor to be here with you, Pat. How are you doing in this moment? Where are you?
I feel grounded in your presence, which is welcome. It's been a busy week, and I mentioned to you before we click record, it's been an interesting week because it's been different environments and different people and local radio stations with DJs that have never heard the term shadow work, and
Yeah.
having 5 minutes on national radio to try put across a concept. And equally been in corporate environments, and then doing my own sessions where people are a bit more engaged, and then getting to speak to someone like yourself who's deep in the work. It's a beautiful challenge to get to be between different worlds and try to communicate in a clear way, I guess.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. We have a shared mentor, Robert Masters, and he said at some point, when I was in conversation with him, I don't remember if it was in a training where you were there as well. He said, I was never able to make shadow work popular. So in a way, I see you and I see us as these kind of like people that are trying to bring the conversation more in the hearts of people. So I wonder what it felt like for you to be in the presence of these, um, let's say, people that are not so much in the work. What did it feel like to try to translate that idea of shadow integration, of shadow work to them?
I felt quite vulnerable this week. It was
Yeah.
like when we go on our hero's journey, we hopefully come out the other side with gold, but we know that to get to the gold, you've got to go through some challenge. So
Yeah.
there's a part of me that knows by introducing people to this, they're going to get to the goal, but they're first going to go through the challenge. And I think I feel a bit of weight around that responsibility of, it's like Neo in the Matrix handing out the options. But it's been beautiful too. I had an interview during the week, and I was dreading it because this guy on the radio interviewed me 3 years ago for my last book, and
Yeah.
he just wasn't into it, like super disengaged and sarcastic and mocking, and I was quite hurt by it. I thought, oh, this is not what I want to be doing. And I saw his name pop up, and I said, oh no, I've got the same guy again. And he just went with it. 25 minutes of conversation. He told me about his father, his relationship with us. It just opened up the conversation, and
Yeah.
that was exciting to think that it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see people that have never looked at this stuff see a glimpse of wow, like I've got
Yeah.
some control in my life that I didn't know was there. So
I love
it's
that.
vulnerable and exciting, I think.
Yeah. There's something you mentioned that I find quite fascinating and that I've experienced in my own work. What does it feel like to be the person that is basically inviting people to look at the areas in their lives that they unconsciously don't even want to look into? And you
Mm,
know that the very moment they allow themselves to look in there, they might uncover pain that they
mm.
didn't want to sit with before. What does it feel like to be in that unique position? Because that's how I that's how I see you. That's how I see myself usually. When somebody comes and wants to do deep work, I'm like, well, we're gonna have to look into this. How does that
Mm.
feel like to you?
It's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I think you met my friend Niall on one of the trainings with Robert, and Niall is very sensitive energetically. He can tune into everything, and he came to one of my launches the other day, and afterward we sat for food, and he said, "I can feel the energy in your stomach. There's some fear there, and there's some," and it was true. I could feel a lot of. My hometown was an interesting launch because it was people I grew up with, that I went to school
Yeah.
with, that I do jujitsu with, like people from many different contexts, and as open as I think I am with everyone in my life, to sit on stage or stand on stage and go deep into shame and inner critic and inner child and sexuality and all these different aspects in front of
Yeah.
everyone. And it was interesting, right? So I was carrying a lot. So it feels, I guess, something I come back to. It's probably a strange thing, but like the people that I admire in life had to feel these feelings too. Like
Yeah.
if you're going to change the mold in some capacity, it's not going to be a smooth thing that feels comfortable all the time. So I guess it's my own hero's journey again, similar to what you're experiencing, maybe. How is it for you?
Yeah. How was it for me? I think I haven't experienced it yet in the full capacity that you are experiencing at the moment. Like I see you as the prophet that is going back home, where you went on the journey and you harnessed some wisdom, and now you are becoming the spokesperson of that wisdom in the places where people knew your former self.
Hmm.
And that place would be bringing shadow work to Africa for me.
Wow.
So I haven't sat there yet with people who saw me grow. The guy who dreamt of being the economist and who is now talking about shadow work. What the hell is that? So, um, I am basically mostly surrounded by people who know who I've become right now. So, at the moment, I can't say I am fully in your experience right now, but I would love to know more about what it felt like for you to be right there, to to be to do the best you can to hold your individuated self
Mhm.
in the places where people only knew who Pat was in the past. And if you can say a little bit more about individuation and then your individuated self, especially for people who are just tuning into the conversation. And also something that we're gonna do, we're gonna just like ground what shadow work actually is, because you and I are deep into this work, but I am assuming some people are um leaning into this conversation and might not be as familiar with it. So, yeah, I threw a lot at you.
It's good.
Start. So, where do you want to start?
Well, it's funny because I think of the other night, I think I threw a lot at the audience because I'm so close to this work that I was being interviewed and I was, as I say, talking about shame and then inner critic and then fear and then when it came to the end of the talk, there was a space for Q&A and the room was silent because it felt
Yeah.
like a trance because people were on, they were latching on to different pieces because I'm so close to it that to sit on stage, I'm like, I don't know if I've anything of value to offer. But when it's brand new for people, it's completely different. In terms of my individuation process, I would say in short, I grew up very sensitive and the sensitivity was not welcome. And so I was bullied quite a bit. I think it was just a target to that energetically for whatever reason.
Mm.
And I learned to hide a lot of myself to hide my sensitivity, to mask it in whatever ways I could. And so um, when I became a teenager, I started martial arts and weight training, and for the first time in my life, found confidence and kind of developed a persona as a martial artist. And obviously, when you present yourself in an environment in a certain way, it's kind of like your environment starts to mirror back. Oh, Pat's a judo guy, and I
Yeah.
really latched onto that. I cage fought in America when I was 18 and 19, and it was, in retrospect, I was actually a little bit sad when I thought about the cage fighting days recently because it's kind of, some people love it, but I wasn't doing it from a place of love. It was more from I think it was self harm in a way. I was struggling a lot with my mental health, and feeling physical pain was made more sense to me because I couldn't understand my anxieties and my fears. Um, a friend of mine who I met through the martial arts took his own life, and he had been a fitness trainer. And I think when he died, I felt a legacy to him that I needed to pursue fitness because he didn't get to because he was
Yeah.
struggling so much. And so I became a fitness guy. I built a big brand in Ireland as a fitness guy after failing with two businesses. And um, a lot of people bought into my story because they saw me fail and then they saw me kind of rise up and build this big fitness community, end up on national TV, brought out books about fitness. Facebook used to fly me around the world to tell my story about growing my business. My whole life changed in many ways. And
Yeah.
when I peaked in the fitness journey, I realized this is not for me anymore. I've kind of got what I needed from this. And I walked away and had a bit of a dark night of the soul, I would say, at 28, where I ticked every box I thought would make me happy. And I was still struggling. And I thought there's really something wrong with me here. And the last 10 years have been a search for meaning and fulfillment and I think peace more than anything. So my individuation process has been, yeah, reclaiming the sensitivity and the authenticity. And I think I had to have all the external success first to realize that that wasn't it. And I ran out of places to look and eventually had to come home to myself. And that's an ongoing journey of trying to uh, really embody my aliveness, I think, in whatever form that is, whether it's my anger, my joy, my pleasure, it's constantly giving myself permission to be more of me, I think.
Yeah, I love that so much. And there are so many like layers in what you shared that I just want to spend some time with a little bit more. I have this way of looking at life where I feel like um, life itself is this benevolent design where the things that you do not express, the world around you is going to challenge you in ways that will try to pull it out of you. So
Mm.
there's a part of your journey where you are this sensitive boy growing up in Ireland, and it's like you are experiencing bullying. And the way I'm perceiving that, it is life kind of like molding you through the process of reclaiming some of your maybe repressed fierceness or repressed um, power in a way, or to basically build a structure that can actually hold the sensitivity. Because I had
Mm.
something very similar to you where same thing. Growing up as a kid in Africa, I was the crier. That was just my reputation. It's like it would poke me and I would cry. My mantra was like, leave me the fuck alone. And bullied quite a bit. I started weight training because I wanted to beat my bullies. And I did some of it at some point. And looking back, I'm like, I feel like life has shaped me, and later in, approaching my 30s, I was like, okay, now I'm starting to see that a big part of it was for me not to harden that hard that I suppressed the sensitivity, but to build a container so that I can actually hold the sensitivity. So I want to basically hear what does that evoke into you. With looking back at your own journey, would you
Mm.
say that some of the hardening was a transition necessary for you to be able to kind of like now more gracefully hold the sensitivity?
Yeah, and that's beautiful. I hadn't thought of it in that way. I often do think about the concept of soul contracts that, we come into this body and we're given a contract with certain lessons to learn, and to learn the lessons we need certain experiences and people. And yeah, I certainly had lessons. I continue to have lessons to learn, and I think if you don't learn them, you repeat them. But yeah, certainly that idea. I'm very at peace now with being. People often tell me I'm vulnerable on stage, and for me, that's not vulnerable. It's stuff that I've already kind of processed and made sense of. The real vulnerability for me is relationship in the background that people don't see. But I think anything that people perceive as vulnerability, a lot of it does come from the fact that I have that warrior, I guess, developed in me that can protect
Yeah,
maybe the lover in me. And yeah, I like that way of thinking about it.
I love it. And I want to also ask you, I have a sense that there's a, because right now you're still practicing martial arts. You're brown belt jiu-jitsu practitioner.
Mm,
And I would love to ask you, compared to where you used to fight from, where you were when you were fighting in the cage at
mm,
18, and now, what would you say is the difference about where you are fighting from or using your body from?
mm.
Is there anything that comes up for you about that?
So many things are different in general. I'll touch on the martial arts, but just in launching the book this week, something that I've really noticed is I'm happy to do the promotion. It's fine, it's part of the piece, but it's not the bit I enjoy. And what I'm happy with in that is that I really enjoyed the book and I enjoyed the journey of who I had to become in the book. So that was the piece for me. I don't need the public validation anymore. Whereas maybe 10 years ago, I didn't really want to write the book. I just wanted the public validation at the end.
Yeah.
So now I recognize everything is an internal. And similar with the martial arts, I moved to America at 18 and fought in Tijuana, Mexico, because I wanted my friends at home to say, wow, Pat's a cage fighter. I never enjoyed it. It wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then going back to it at 28, it's different. It's play. It's play for me. It's connection for me. It's a creative outlet for me. It's something completely different. It's something I want to be able to do for the rest of my life. It's not ego driven. I don't think, well, there's always a bit of ego in there, but it's a completely different energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I look back and there's a part of me that thinks, oh, I wish I had done it differently. But then I think we have to be driven by wounding for a certain period of time before we realize what our worth is. And um, sometimes young guys come to me for mentoring and they're 20, 21, and they're trying to figure it all out. And I'm saying you're supposed to mess it up and be insecure. And I think you're supposed to have all those issues. But I had a huge amount of insecurity
Yeah.
in my 20s. And yeah, that's the biggest change is I like myself now. We talk about shadow, and I don't know if we even talked yet about what shadow specifically is, but those
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I see shadow as any part of myself I'm not willing to love or to be with. And I used to think confidence would come from external success, and now I realize my confidence comes from recognizing that I can be with more and more of myself all the time, which means I can be with more and more more and more of life. Because the more of my internal experience I shut down, the smaller my world becomes. Because if I can't be with my fear, then I can't be in fearful situations. If I can't be with my grief, I can't be in connection with others. So it's like when I open my internal world, I open the external, and it's this beautiful two-way
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
Oh, I just love that. And there's a point I want to touch on. It's like, and I would love to kind of have a throw you a conversation with the 18-year-old Pat, like
Mm.
getting in the cage. And I wonder if the 18-year-old you can answer this question, which is what I am actually fighting for that I cannot, that I have a hard time accessing within myself is what was going on there at that
Mm.
moment.
I just felt alone.
Yeah.
Um, I just felt alone. I look back now at my teenage self, and I had such a range of interests, and I fit in with everyone. I played in rock bands. I did martial arts. I got on with the nerds in school. I got along with everyone.
Hmm.
That's what I see now. But at the time, I saw that I didn't have anywhere that I actually fit in. I was a chameleon and all this kind of thing. What I needed at 18, I think it was the blessing of elders. Like I think it was an older man telling me you're doing a good job, and
Yeah.
you don't need to be anything other than what you want to be. If I'd been celebrated for what I loved, I think I would have grown in what I loved rather than you know look into archetypical ways of trying to be a man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, that's something we're going to be talking about. I definitely want to touch on the piece of like, what does it look like for you um, to to embody, this modern version of masculinity where it's not just like physical warriorship. I also feel like you carry this energy of emotional warriorship. It's a different version of the warrior that is needed during these times
Mm.
because most people or most men are not going to go there to fight wars like we used to fight. But I really just feel like there are some more psychological wars that need psychological emotional wars within ourselves that need to be won. So I'm definitely gonna come back on this. And there's something about you that I see which is the only way I can name it is devotion to depth. Or there is this energy that I see reflected in you, which is I am going to attempt to express the highest potential of a human being that Pat can possibly become. Like I see how you've done that with even being a fitness trainer and bringing it to the highest peak you could bring it. And now realizing, oh, there's still something that feels empty here. I thought this was the way, but this is actually not the way. And now leaning into, okay, I am going to descend. I'm going to go into my body. I'm going to go into my heart. I'm going to go into the things that I didn't want to see before because I thought the answer was outside of myself. All that to say, there seems to be something that happened in your journey that caused you to begin to value depth or the highest possible expression of Pat that you could possibly attempt. And I wonder if you have any insight on that. What was that for you?
If you speak to the women that I meet in Bali, they'll tell you it's because I'm Scorpio. This is why I like it. uh, you know, I'm sure there was lots of glimpses, but one thing that stands out to me is that when I grew my fitness business, I started getting entrepreneur awards and lots of things I didn't expect. And one of the things I didn't expect was someone asked me to do a public speaking engagement, and I was terrified. But I prepared 5 slides for a slideshow, and it was a 5 minute talk, so one slide for each minute. And it went okay. So I did another one, and then I committed to doing 100 free talks in a year, so I could find my comfort. And I would just travel all over the country, speak in big schools, small schools, colleges, businesses. I once spoke in an old lady's back garden. She told me she had a gym, and I showed up, and it was just her and her friends. And I would use the slideshow, and then I showed up once, and I forgot the slideshow that was 60 slides for 60 minutes, and I went to speak, and the slides didn't work, and so I had to talk without the slides for that. So effectively, I had to talk from the heart,
Yeah.
um, and I spoke from the heart, and the fulfillment that came from people saying they enjoyed that was like, oh, they enjoyed what was real, as opposed to they enjoyed the perfect slideshow that came from my head. And I think that those kind of moments where I would show a bit more of myself, and it will be loved or accepted even.
Yeah.
It was like, oh wow, how much further can we go with this? To a friend of mine says, and I think it's beautiful that they tell us to love ourselves, but it's not always easy to love ourselves. But
Yeah.
when you get in front of people that love you and teach you, they can teach you how to love yourself. And I think I've had those moments where like there's been a crack in my armor, and a part of me has been shown,
Mm.
and it's been loved, and it's given me the courage to continue to lean in. And it doesn't mean I always need to be validated or loved. I now have I guess it's like a baby and a mother. Like the mother regulates the baby. They call it co-regulation, but really it's
Yeah.
one way. And I think I've been supported enough to the point now that I have the confidence. I needed that. I needed a little bit of
Yeah.
acceptance.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I just want to notice the grace in which you are um expressing and embracing that, the fact that you needed that. Because I often see many people that are involved in the healing arts, we just want to get into that space where our healing is completely fully in our hands, where we didn't necessarily need something from the world around us to kind of prompt you to bring forth more of your fullness. We often have this Puritarian aspect of us, which is no, I just want to be the ultimate self healer. Like I'm gonna heal myself, and I keep on noticing that um, the co-regulation that you're speaking about, it's a relationship with the world at large. It's like
mm,
in its own way, the world around you wants to prompt you to express more of your fullness, even when it doesn't look like it, in my
mm.
experience at the very least. So I want to ask you, what at this point, what is your relationship with the perfectionist inside?
I don't know that I have the most accurate understanding of my perfectionist, because I feel like I'm pretty rough around the edges, but maybe that's my perfectionist playing.
Hmm. I'd love to
um,
hear more.
Something I've noticed is, hmm, how do I gauge the quote unquote success of, for example, a talk? So if I do a talk in a corporate environment and everyone comes and says, oh, they really enjoyed it,
Hmm.
I often ask myself, what would need to happen in that session for me to say that was really great?
Hmm.
Because even sometimes when everyone says it was great, I'm like, oh, it was okay. And maybe it's the environment. Maybe it's I'm just not feeling the connection of it. But I think my perfectionist in some ways shows up there where I'm just like 100 people can tell me how good it was,
Yeah.
and not that I beat myself up, not that I feel like, oh, that was not good, but there's a part of me that's just like, that didn't really fill me the way maybe I would like it to fill me. But again, it could be the fact that I'm in a corporate environment. That's usually where that happens, and that's not my place as such. But the perfectionist, I think the perfectionist probably shows up the most in relationship, which is the area where I would say I struggle the most, the intimate
Hmm.
relationship. I've been given that feedback from ex-partners that they see me in other areas willing to take chances and make mistakes and learn as I go. And they said they can see me putting so much pressure on myself to getting it right when it comes to relationships. So that's
Yeah.
maybe where it shows up.
Oh, I would love to dive in there. You just, presented a whole. You're just like, I mean, bro, you can't do that. You're just like, oh,
I'm just looking
here's
for
where it's
free.
juicy.
I'm looking for free coaching, Xavier. Let's go.
Now, let's go. Let's just talk about it. So before we get there, there's just this thing I wanted to ask you when you shared about receiving appreciation from um 100 people around you and it not really landing. And I remember one time I was having a session with our mentor Robert, and I was just, you know, I've had a similar experience of like bringing my work out there, and it's as if I was getting numb to the impact that people seem to reflect my work is having on them. And then he asked me this question: whose acknowledgement of your work would you actually give a shit about? And the answer came as intuitively as intuitively, spontaneously. It was, of course, my father. Um, I would have wanted to have his acknowledgement about anything that I'm actually doing right now. So I want to ask you, is there any such thing playing out for you? Anybody whose acknowledgement of the work you're doing right now in the world as the Pat you know yourself to be today, that would actually be truly meaningful for you.
Hmm. Um, Up until recent years, I would have immediately said my father. Hmm. But in retrospect, I feel like a lot of that was me trying to change him in many ways. And the more kind of
Mm,
accepting I've become of him, the less I feel the need for that. Of course, I would
yeah.
like my father to appreciate my work and acknowledge my way of being. The immediate answer that came to me was myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would love to get in there. It's like what it would take to get you to appreciate more of your own work is what comes up for you.
What comes up for me is energetically, I just feel in a really good spot, or I'm not in such a good spot. It's very much an energy thing, and if I'm in a good place, it just feels like very much appreciating my work, feeling in flow, um, proud of what I'm doing, um, and then just sometimes the energy is maybe a little bit off, and it's the opposite. And I would rarely have a very strong inner critic the way I would have used to. It would just
Mm-hmm.
be a bit more flat, I would say. There's a bit less enthusiasm around it. It feels like a job. When I'm in flow, it feels like my vocation.
Yeah.
When I'm a little bit tired or disconnected from it, it feels like a job, and I feel like I'm going through the motions maybe a little bit. Um, yeah.
I love that. I think one of my personal takeaways from leaning into the practice of shadow integration. By the way, if anybody listening to this still has a hard time understanding what the shadow is, it's basically the sum total of the aspects of you that you'd rather not look into, that you'd rather disown or keep in the dark. But something that I've seen for myself was a growing capacity to be present with myself, especially when I feel disconnected, uninspired, or low in any way, shape, or form. And I'd love to know what is your relationship with your disconnected self, the part of you that is not in flow at the moment. What does that often look like for you?
I think I feel the need to name it. So
Yeah.
if I've finished a workshop and people are coming up and telling me how great it was, oftentimes I'll name the fact that I feel a little bit off or that I didn't feel fully connected, or so it's almost like I want to reveal that part. And I don't know if it's that part I'm trying to reveal, but I want to reveal that I didn't fully connect. I saw this thing, it's maybe a strange thing, but like horse therapy.
Yeah.
Um, and someone said like, don't lie to the horse. Don't like, if you're afraid, be afraid. And if you're not, because they used to say, if a dog's coming after you, pretend you're not afraid, or if a horse coming, but you can't pretend because they can tell the disconnect in your nervous system between what you're presenting and what's real.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part of that in me that I don't want to pretend that I felt in flow if I didn't feel in flow.
Yeah.
So I think I reveal that. I do find it challenging in the sense that I believe so strongly in this work that when I'm a little bit disconnected, it makes me question everything because this work is everything to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's a thought form in there that I would just love to bring forth even more. It's like in the moments when you feel disconnected, even as you're leaning into this work that is so I want to say invaluable for you. What is the assumption that is playing out in there?
Can you rephrase that question one more time,
Yeah.
Xavier?
So let me put it this way. Usually with some work that is really meaningful, it's like we have the that what often comes up for me is that I should feel fired up all the time.
Ah,
That I should be, and I have moments of genuinely feeling that. Like, okay, this work is genuinely meaningful. I can see the changes that I within myself with people that I work with and all of that. Even I'm writing something, I'm just like, damn it, this feels good to lean in there. And then there are the moments where my heart just feels like, in that space where it's flat. There are moments that are flat. And sometimes I feel like we may assume that there is something maybe not working well with what we involved into. So yeah, I wonder what it looks like for you to relate to that specific space. If there's anything, yeah, what comes up for you there?
what's interesting in that for me is, so I do a book launch in my hometown the other day. My parents said, "I hope you don't mind, but we're not going to go because they're private, and they and my genuine response is, I totally get it. This isn't a big deal to me. This is just my work. So it's just me going to work the same way you go to work, same way I don't, I don't. So in that sense, I'm just like, oh, it's just the job. And there's that kind of some days in work you feel good, other days you don't feel so good. So there's a bit of that there. I guess the other bit that comes up for me is I mentioned the purpose of this work for me is to allow myself to experience more aliveness. And so
Yeah,
then I question like, what is my relationship to flatness or whatever we want to call
yeah,
it? Do I not consider that to be aliveness and an important texture of everything else? That's what I feel. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And there's something you said actually in the foreword of your book that I'm gonna pull out and I'm just gonna read it because I think it's really um, informative. I think these times are asking of us to be in relationship with all of life, like light and dark, you know. And that forward you had in there, I think it's a quote by, I'm gonna read it, Alexander. Um, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Solzhenitsyn. I don't know. But
I only
anyways,
put Xavier. I only put his name in because I knew I wasn't doing an audiobook.
so I'm gonna read it anyways. If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who among us is willing to destroy a piece of their own heart? So that's the quote. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, you talk about I think it was a meditation circle where you were involved, and People were asked to introduce themselves or to say something about themselves, and then you had all the spiritual folks, the light workers that were expressing just the bright part, that there's space for, like, I don't know, pure love and light and all these beautiful things. And then you went ahead and said something along the lines of, like, sometimes I'm a nice guy, sometimes I'm an asshole. And you express just the fullness of the spectrum.
Mm.
And I want to basically have your take of what it looks like for people right now in a very practical way to begin exploring more of the full spectrum
Mm.
within themselves, and what is and how that is actually one of the most healthy things that they can do, not just for themselves and for people around them.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a yoga teacher training on Copenhagen, and it was funny. There was a guy, I think he was from Argentina, and I think he was trying to impress the women in the group by asking the spiritual question, "Who am I? Who am I?" And one of the girls would say, "My name is Julie," and he'd say, "No, Julie, you are so much more than your name." And she'd say, "I'm a yoga teacher." He said, "No, you're so much more." And so they all started talking about being love and light, and I said, "I'm a bit of an asshole sometimes." Um, yeah, I guess, my understanding is that we all grow up biologically, we get older, it's inevitable, but
Yeah.
psychologically we can get stuck. So the little boy who's told at 7 years of age that boys don't cry maybe freezes in time, and so he might be 37 or 47 now, but have the emotional maturity of a 7-year-old because that part just cut off. And so the idea of owning all of ourselves is to recognize maybe who you became. So my understanding is we become wounded, we learn to hide aspects of ourselves, and then to compensate, we put other aspects forward. So an example, I'm bullied because I cry, and so I hide my tears, and I become an overachiever, and the overachiever becomes my mask to the world. And my invitation to people will be to consider some of the ways you like to be seen. Work ethic is a common one. And then look at the opposite of it. So the person with a lot of work ethic might say the opposite is laziness.
Yeah.
Laziness might actually be rest in disguise. The more pride you take in one aspect of who you are, typically the more shame you'll have around the opposite. And so you lose the potential gift. And again, if we come back to the fact that these messages were generally taken on in the first couple of years, it's a very black and white message. It's good or it's bad, it's right or it's wrong. And so the invitation with shadow work is to find the gray area and to have a bit of context that laziness is not laziness if it's followed by some work. It's rest. Or emotion is not weak if it's matched with courage or whatever it might be. So it's that's the possibility. I share a book or a story in the book about when I was a kid, we used to go to my grandmother's house. All the cousins, like 16 of us, would go there, and um, it was a big garden, a big back garden. We go out and play football, and there was a hedge in the back garden. And my cousin told me when I was a kid, "Oh, there's a fox. There's an evil fox that lives in the hedge."
Hmm.
And suddenly, I got terrified at that side of the garden, and I had to stay on the other side. So the garden suddenly got half the size. And then one day, I discovered that there was no evil fox, and the whole thing opened up again. And I kind of see again life the same way, that if I've shut down certain aspects of myself, I become fearful of experiencing those aspects, and so my world gets much smaller. But if I recognize that it's okay for me to be with my fear, or be with my vulnerability, or be with my grief, then I'm not afraid to go out into the world and try new things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, I want to shift to relationships, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I'd love to dive into the juiciness there. I mean, relationships for me have been a master teacher. Um, it's easy for me to be the student of life. It's easy for me to be in my office and to work with people. It is easy for me to be the hermit. Um, and it's a big part of my imprint.
Mm.
And I've realized that all this work of shadow integration comes to its peak efficacy in the context of relational dynamics. And you've mentioned that, you know, a little bit of your perfectionist sometimes comes up in relationships. And I want to just get in there in a very much messy way, you know. What are the aspects of yourself that you love to hate when it comes to relationships?
this shame that comes up for me around not performing. So a lot of my work is performance. I'm bringing things to the world, and I'm offering value, if you will. And so a lot of my life has been work related. And so there's been a sense that people like me when I put things out there, and when I share, and when I add value. And so I forget in the moments that I'm just sat next to a partner, not doing anything, that that's enough just to be there. And
Yeah.
there's a part of me that has shame around the fact that I'm not, quote unquote, adding anything here.
Hmm.
I think that's the piece that's most difficult for me, is just to believe that I'm enough without having to bring something all of the time, which is exhausting.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I'm a breathwork facilitator. What I teach is to bring loving presence. I say the technique doesn't matter. You just got to love the person in front of you. And I forget that, and I have a hard time bridging the gap between everything I believe and stand for, and then embodying that in intimate relationship. There's fear there for me around just bringing loving presence and just being there.
Yeah. And what is it that you fear might get exposed if you lean into that space? Because I assume that one of the reasons why it's so challenging to just believe your mere presence is enough in the context of relationships is, as for everything, we attempt to protect ourselves from pain that we don't want to experience. And I wonder what would that be if you allowed yourself to fully lean into that space and to even like soften into this place where I don't have to do anything other than being here with you.
What's the fear? They'll see me and they'll leave.
Yeah. And
They'll see
the me you're talking about is the me that they will see is,
messy and anxious and unlovable. Uh, yeah, it's the wounded little boy that learned to isolate because it wasn't safe to be in connection. So he went and hid.
yeah,
It's him.
yeah, yeah. So it's like the aspect that feels like, hey, I don't have my shit together in this place. It's like I don't have it all kind of down into I mean, there's actually no process here linearized that I can follow step by step to
Mm,
feel at ease with you. I just have to be, basically. And it's this space where I can it's like this space where I could be whatever the hell I want to be. But growing up, I was reflected that it was never really okay to just be that. Yeah. And I wonder if you could speak to that anxious little boy that is inside of you, and right now exploring what it looks like to disclose his heart
mm,
to, let's say, a woman that you are now dating in your adult life.
mm.
What are some of the, I want to say, messages that you want to anchor to that part of you?
You know what comes up for me is around almost betraying him a little bit by inviting in um, the wrong types of women at times. So there's kind of a bit of confusion there around allowing, not having boundaries, or not having clarity around what's okay with me, and maybe the people pleasing part. I guess him being, how would Robert put it, dominated,
Yeah.
maybe the warrior we talked about earlier, not stepping up and sort of protecting him. Um, that's maybe the conflict or the confusion. And so then the polarity is to either have no boundary, and it's common, right? Not have boundaries, or then go to the opposite and put walls, 10-foot walls around him. What was the question? What do I want him to know?
Yeah.
It's about, I want to allow him more space to play.
Hmm.
It feels like there's a burden on him to get it right. So
Yeah.
I want him to be allowed to play,
Yeah.
and to be around people that allow him to play and not have to get it right.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
And
you for that.
you, there's something about that energy. You talk about the inner child as well in your book, and you've also talked about the equine therapy. Like you won't lie to a horse.
Yeah.
The horse will see through you. And one thing that I've learned through the work of shadow integration is, especially when you try to work with the child inside of you, you cannot lie to the child inside of you because you share the same heart. That child has been there through every single thing. That child can tell when you are speaking from the inner critic, and that child can tell when you're speaking from your heart. So it's like sometimes one of the some of the most empowering things that I've said to my inner child were, "Hey, I'm freaking scared here too. I don't know what to do with this person. I can feel that this person is knocking at the door of my fucking heart now, and I am
Mm.
scared shitless. I can feel that even my children, they want more love than I was conditioned to give growing up. And I'm like
Mm.
kind of holding my breath to a certain degree, and
Yeah.
I feel like what you're leaning into and demonstrating and expressing is this younger boy inside of you basically craves more trust with the adult that you've become, and kind of like asking, are you going to be able to create the appropriate condition for me to actually disclose more of my true self?
Mm.
And I wonder, what does it look like for you, especially in your relationships at the moment, to build more of that trust between you and the part of you that was hurt in relationships before?
A friend recently said to me that anything we gain in our lives from being inauthentic, we have to remain inauthentic to hold on to that thing. And
Yeah.
there's been a lot of that in the past. So I think the child definitely needs authenticity around what's okay and what's not okay, and be willing to reveal myself and show myself early on, as opposed to, playing mental games to say that, oh, I'll hide that for now and I'll hide that for now and I'll have no preferences or needs for now. And then eventually I'll bring it in. So it's about having the courage to lose the connection.
Yeah.
I oftentimes I've given the child away too quickly and given the trust to people that haven't earned the trust, and abandoned myself. It's the child needs to be put first. I think that's the piece. It's like oftentimes the child was put second and the other person was put first. So it's maintaining that connection to the child first, and checking in with them. Do they feel safe? Do they feel um yeah, what do they need before
Yeah.
outsourcing my stuff to another?
Yeah. And what does it look like for you now in your relational life to show up in relationships without abandoning yourself?
I went on a date a couple of weeks ago, and the lady messaged and she said, because again, I'm in Bali at the moment, she said, "Are you vegan?" And I was almost going to pretend. And I said, "No, no, 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 no." And she said, "Oh, thank God." So it's, no, it's little things. It's just, it's knowing what's important to me in my life and keeping the important things, putting myself first, it's not bending the rules, yeah, it's prioritizing myself. It's allowing space for myself. Example, I'm in the midst of this book tour. It's crazy at the moment. There's a million things happening. In the past, if I bumped into someone or someone wanted to go on a date, I'd be dropping everything to go on the date, despite being exhausted or being wrecked. It would just be like, wouldn't even consider those things. So I actually did, John Wineland calls it the feminine cleanse last year. So I took 7 months of no dating, no relationship, no flirting, no nothing, to try and better understand my patterns and my woundings and stuff. And as you said earlier, I think relationship is the crucible. So I've done that work and that's helped me to get clear. And I very much recognize that my next piece of work is not another book. It's not another course. It's being in relationship and staying in relationship that's a healthy dynamic.
Yeah.
Um, and I think last year set me up with the conditions to be able to welcome that now.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the work you've done so far has been a preparation to be able to hold your heart open without abandoning yourself, which I feel like it's a skill. To really practice being in a space where, because I feel like relationships, they carry this energy where if you want to be intimate with somebody, you have to make peace with the possibility that you're gonna get hurt. That at some point, by expressing your natural needs and boundaries, you might be the one that actually causes hurt to the other person, sometimes even when you don't want to, by just
Mm.
saying this is what I'm available for and this is what I'm not available for. So it's this place where the heart has to at the same time be open and find resilience in the openness, which in my opinion is one of the biggest mind fuckeries ever,
Mm.
ever, especially if you want to experience deep love. So, yeah, I there's another thing I wanted to ask you about, um being seen as a villain in some of your relationships, even when you don't intend to hurt others. What has it been like for you? And also, how would you say leaning into the practice of shadow integration has supported you in, let's say, making peace with being disliked, if it takes, if that's what it takes to be fully true to yourself? I wonder
Mm.
what comes up for you around it.
I recognize that I take pride in being clear, like in my communication, in my work, in certain. I love to be clear, and so a shadow in that is it's hard for me to come across messy or unclear. And
Yeah.
when I'm in the early stages of relationships, sometimes that lack of clarity comes through. Maybe it's fear, and I know what I want, but I present as unclear, and that feels edgy for me. And I will have had dating experiences where the woman will tell me that I didn't show up vulnerably, and I didn't. And in my mind, it feels vulnerable to show up messy and unclear because to me that's an edge and that's different and stuff. So in those scenarios, I'd recognize it's kind of like I'm not perfect, and I understand you being pissed off, and I also I'm learning. So the villain thing, I rarely feel like the villain, but I definitely take too much responsibility at times, I think.
Hmm.
I once had a woman cheat on me, and I was still worried about how she felt and was she okay after it all came out. So there was like a more self-abandonment. That was painful.
Yeah.
Recognizing that despite how badly it ended, I was still more concerned with her than I was myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mm.
just want to name and acknowledge how, even as we're going into this conversation, your openness, honesty, vulnerability in the midst of this conversation, how that is a direct outcome of the work that you're doing, of the work that you're teaching. And I just want to acknowledge that because I can feel that, I mean, none of what we're talking about has been premeditated. None of what we are discussing right now has been straightened. Um, so it's a completely on the spot kind of conversation. And I really feel like this is the gift of leaning into the practice of shadow integration. It's like, are you willing to be with life in every moment, as messy as it is, as unscripted as it is, with an open heart and with your authenticity leading? So I just want to name that at the moment because I can tell that this is what is going on. And I just wanted to point it out because very often we can operate from the spiritual perfectionist, and God knows that, in my own ways I have some of that within me, also always reaching for the next level of, like, I don't want to say perfection, but the next level of coherence, of alignment, or whatever it may be that you actually value. But what we are experiencing at the moment is just a freaking open, unscripted conversation where you give yourself permission to be exactly who you are. And I just want to receive that as a gift in this moment. And
Mm.
yeah, I want to lean into shame because it's a big theme in your book. I
Mm.
want to lean into shame. I want to lean into masculinity. as well, and how it has shaped your journey as a man, and yeah, your relationship with your masculinity at the moment. Anything that comes up for you around it, I would be so happy to hear.
Mm. Just to put around round off that piece on relationship, if anyone sees me launch a relationship course within the next 6 months, you'll know it's not integrated material.
I am
No, thank you. I enjoy that piece of work. Thank you.
well, that's great, And also part of me wants to say I don't believe anybody who goes out there relationship wise pretending that they have it all together.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's for me, relationships are learning how to dance with our humanness with an open heart. This is what this work is all about, if you ask me. So honestly, and I see you doing it right now, like practicing it right now.
Hmm.
Not in these past relationships, like even in these past relationships you were talking about. I have some relationships that I've gone through where I was the most asleep I could have ever been. And looking back, I'm like, holy shit. Well, this brought so much to my awareness that is now informing who I am today. So, yeah, I don't know anybody who has it together when it comes to relationships. And when somebody pretends, I'm just like, okay. Um, um, maybe there's some humility that is needed at that level, but that's only my perspective. So, yeah.
Shame, shame, shame. You asked
Shame.
about shame.
Yeah.
Shame and masculinity. For me, the experience of shame is learning that aspects of myself are unlovable and not welcome. And of course, that happens in relation to other people. And so I've been involved in men's work for a couple of years, and the value in that has been that the healing can happen in relationship in the same way that the wounding happened in relationship. And yeah, I spent most of my 20s on a relentless pursuit of personal development and lived in the books and read all the books and did all the techniques and everything else. And but it wasn't until probably getting into groups. I mean, therapy is useful, of course, coaching is useful, but groups have been very beneficial in terms of allowing myself to be seen. And one of my favorite authors, Anthony de Mello, talks about he said something like, I was neurotic for years and anxious and depressed, and I kept wanting to change, and everyone kept telling me to change, and no matter what happens, I couldn't change. And then he said, one day I met someone who told me, don't change, you're perfect the way you are. And I relaxed and I came alive and everything changed. And I think that's been true for me. It's like, again, being in spaces where the aspects of myself that are hard to love are welcomed, or there's even just like the door is opened a little bit to those parts. They're
Yeah.
given a little bit of space, has allowed me to welcome them back in. In Ireland, growing up as a man, a lot got shut down. I'm sure it was the same in many parts of the world, but I would say anger was the only emotion that was kind of safe to show because it was a protective energy. Whereas if you were sad, if you're too happy, even like all these things were shamed as being a man. So it's like the box that you're allowed to be in just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's been a big reclamation over the last couple of years. And it's starting to, I'm returning to the village now with the gold in terms of like in these events this week. I've seen like half the room has been men at all the events. There's been hundreds of men coming out to the events this week and men of every age. And, you know, but yeah, I guess traditionally for men, we don't talk in the same way. Maybe growing up, we're playing sports, so it's a very kind of competitive energy.
Yeah.
I remember doing a Wachuma ceremony, a San Pedro plant medicine ceremony, and this real visceral um, feeling of grief came up for me, and it was all around the loneliness that I had felt, and then the competitiveness that had come off the back of that loneliness. Because there was loneliness and disconnection from men, I felt this competitive energy where I couldn't want to see other men win. It was like subtle. I presented like a nice guy, but there was a part of me that didn't want other men's coaches to be more successful than me.
Yeah.
Didn't want my jiu-jitsu teammates to win medals. I needed to be the best because that was my only way of standing out. If I was in disconnection, and interestingly, in that ceremony, I made a commitment. I said, I'm going to get all the men's coaches in Ireland that maybe I see as competitors in some way. And I'm going to get us all in a room together and we're all going to do plant medicine together. And that was a
Yeah,
beautiful healing experience. But
yeah,
I think one of the biggest challenges in the world today is like the father wound of young men not being blessed by their fathers or by older men, which creates this inadequacy where they're constantly reaching to try and prove themselves to their
yeah.
father through the world. Even if their father's gone, they're still trying to prove it to the world. And that's what we're seeing with the politicians, where it's all about holding power over others. If men loved other men and expressed their love for other men, something would soften and there wouldn't be this need to win. That's my take, at least.
I love that. It's like I can recognize so many parts of my path being fueled by that boy inside of me that is basically screaming, Dad, see me, see me,
Mm.
see me, see me, see me, see me, see me. Um, Absolutely, I can sense that so much, and it's been a huge part of my journey up until, there was a part in my path where I decided to drop this journey where I was pursuing being an economist, and like I was in a PhD program, and that was kind of highly regarded by my dad, and I knew if drop that, um, I will basically disappoint him and everybody else, everybody who knew me. Um, so yeah, and then after that, I was attempting to run away from the shame that I put myself into, like feeling
Mm.
inadequate, feeling like a dropout, and all of that. So, to a man that is right now struggling with his shame, what would you tell him to get him to meet with more love and compassion his shameful self, so that
Mm.
maybe there could be more grace within his being? Because as men, what we often do is we try to better ourselves as a way to run away from the shame. And that's kind of what I did. And, by the way, I'm not saying this is something wrong to do. I'm just saying, usually, as a way to run away from the shame, we try to kind of like lift heavier in the gym. There was a journey in my path when I wanted to be be the biggest lifter in the gym, whatever gym I would go to. I would look for the guy who would lift the heaviest. I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna outlift you.
Mm.
If you're benching 300 pounds, okay, next week I'm gonna bench more than that, or whatever. You're squatting. Anyways, that was part of the blueprint.
Mm.
And yeah, to a guy struggling with shame, and that has been trying to achieve as a way to run away from shame, what would you tell him?
And what you just shared is probably a good analogy in the sense that there's always going to be someone stronger. And if your only way of easing your anxiety that you feel within is to get better, there's always going to be someone better because better implies you're competing, unless you're, competing with yourself. I did there's a show in Ireland called The Late Late Show, which is the biggest TV show in the country. And I was on it years ago. And for me, it was the culmination of like, oh, I've made it. I'm going to make my dad proud. I'm going to make my family proud. And after the show, we were driving back to my home city, and I was in the car reading thousands of tweets on Twitter that were all really supportive and stuff. And I came to one tweet, and it was like, "This guy has no charisma, and he shouldn't be on, shouldn't be on the TV." And I became fixated with this. And at that time, my attitude was probably like, "Oh, how do I become charismatic?" Or like, "How do I deal with what the hater is saying?" And in retrospect, it's like, well, what do you do in that scenario? You turn toward the part of you that doesn't feel charismatic because that's the part that's coming alive in that moment. So I use that as an analogy for your shame is because a part of you feels it's not enough. And to look away from that part is kind of like, I don't know, breaking your arm and getting physio on every other part of your body other than your arms, is looking anywhere other than where the wound is. So I'd encourage the man to turn toward the part and bring some curiosity if they can, which is not always easy. But,
Yeah.
internal family systems, a great form of therapy. They'll say, okay, I'm going to look at this part. I'm going to see how old do you think I am? So, when I think about the part of me that doesn't feel charismatic, for example, or
Hmm.
doesn't, I shouldn't be on TV, I shouldn't be in front of people. How old does that part feel? What was happening at that time? What did that little boy need to hear that he didn't hear? And can I give that to myself in some capacity? That might be a little bit difficult to do in the moment. So the bigger piece I would say is the more challenged we are in life, I think the more support we need. And so when someone's in real deep shame, one of the tenets of shame is we tend to hide ourselves from the world. And you even see it in animals. Like if your dog wrecks the house and you see your dog and you're complaining to the dog will start covering its face, like it's
Yeah.
a universal thing to want to hide ourselves in shame. So I think even though your mind is going to tell you to hide and to withdraw and to go into your cave, it's the very time when you need to be with people and try to find a men's group if you can, where again, it's not always easy. I keep coming back to that at the moment. It's not always easy to love yourself, but when you surround yourself with people who can accept you as you are, it softens something in you and allows a bit of space where you can start to see yourself in a different light. And equally, if you surround yourself with people who always point to your wounds and shame you for them, it's going to have the opposite effect. So, community, I think, can be very healing. But
Yeah.
you've got to act. These people don't just show up on your doorstep. You kind of have to go out and actively pursue this. And those would be two things I would suggest. And yeah,
Yeah, I love that answer so much. There's something that I personally experienced on my journey, which was when allowing myself to be seen in men's groups is something that was really challenging at some point in my life. Um, I have two brothers, and I grew up in an environment where the old way of looking at masculinity, where you repress shame, you repress everything that's in inadequacy, was what was fostered. So, and also as a kid, it was just like clear for me that my sensitivity wasn't safe amongst men.
mm,
You know, so there was a pendulum swing where it could be expressed more when women were around, but amongst men, I had to harden. And a big part of my journey has been about feeling strong enough to allow my sensitivity to be seen amongst men. And I feel like it is a collective masculine wound. This thought form, my vulnerability or my sensitivity or my weakness is not safe around my brothers or around other men. Um, and I wonder if you have anything to say about that, because it played out. It's something that I had to undo, and in my journey of undoing it, that's how I met you, in the, um, I think in the training with Robert, and also many other men that I encountered in like men's groups.
mm,
Um, but yeah, is there anything that you have to say about that?
mm. Something I noticed myself, even having done a lot of work over the years and found a level of, peace within myself and confidence within myself is in spite of all that, if you're in an environment where you're not being met by men, it still creates a sense of disconnect. I think if I can be the most enlightened man in my village, but if there's nobody else in the village that I can speak to on a heartfelt level, it's gonna create some sense for me, at least, of there's something wrong with me, or like I'm the black sheep here, or something like that.
Yeah.
And for me, being around other men who have kind of revealed themselves in the way that I'm willing to reveal myself, something comes alive in me where it's like Carl Jung said something like, loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of people that we can truly be ourselves with, or we can have meaningful conversations with. And it just nourishes, so that's the word, it nourishes something in me when I'm around other men and we can be real for a couple of days. And it's like, oh, and then it kind of creates what you might call a divine discontentment, where you've touched this new possibility and then you go back to like regular life and you're like, no, this is not going to work anymore. I need to be nourished by this. And so it's I guess, you think about food, and if you can eat a lot of junk food, but it's not going to nourish you. You need real food. Social media, you can go on a lot of social media, but it's not going to nourish your social needs. And you can be surrounded by people, but if it's not real conversation and revealing your heart, um, it's not going to nourish that deeper part of you. And human connection is the key.
Yeah, I love it. And what would you say is the key for men to keep a heart open? even in an environment that sometimes still expects them to to be too hardened, because
Mm,
I feel like I feel like there's sometimes a little bit of a disconnect between what people around say they want from men and their capacity to actually be with a man that is open, that is expressive, that is sometimes allowing um, some even his fears to be expressed. What do you feel like is a genuine piece of work that men need to embrace at this moment to be all that they came here to be? You know, to be strong and to also be um, heart. You know, to also have an open heart.
mm. I come at a lot of this stuff from a cognitive lens, in a sense, not fully recognizing that shadow work happens in the moment, and it's deeper than the thoughts alone. But I also believe that what you're aware of, you're in control of, and so Anthony de Mello said that what you're aware of, you're in control of. What you're not aware of is in control of you. So I would suggest a nice starting point will be for men to identify who they become in moments of stress. So it's one thing to say my heart shuts down. It will be another thing to consider, who do I become when my heart shuts down? So do I
Yeah,
become an addict? Do I become a people pleaser? Do I become an outer critic? Do I become my inner critic? And I think starting with an awareness of, in different contexts, who you become allows a little bit of space where the next time it happens, there's an awareness there. There's like, oh, this is happening. Or you could, in relationship, who do I become when my heart shuts down? I become defensive, or I become critical, or whatever it might be. And I think awareness in itself is healing, and that can be the first
mm-hmm.
step, because you start to see the pattern. That's waking up. And maybe that's kind of something I'm talking about a lot at the moment as well, is don't put the pressure on yourself to break the pattern. Start by just seeing the pattern. So who do I become when my heart shuts down in work? Who do I become when my heart shuts down around other men? Who do I become when my heart shuts down with my partner? Who do I become when my heart shuts down with my kids? And then just noticing. I think that's a good starting point. And maybe the next point is to take a few deep breaths in that moment to create a bit of space around the response. And then
Yeah,
maybe in time, there's a new response that forms.
yeah. I love that. I love that so much. And now I would love to ask you a question that I'm gonna ask every guest in this program. Um, in the last year, I've been writing this book called Scars of Gold,
Mm.
and in a similar way, there is a lot of conversations about shadow integration in there. And I would love to ask you, what do you consider right now as one of your scars of gold? And maybe let me explain a little bit more what I mean by a scar of gold. It's like we have these wounds that I consider to be sacred wounds. And these are the wounds that would ask of you to get into the shadow and to meet an aspect of yourself, to reconcile with that aspect of yourself, so that on the other side you can express some light that you didn't have access to before. So I wonder, what would you consider one of these sacred wounds for you, and how did it turn out to become a scar of gold? What comes up for you there?
Yeah, I used to like the expression that the wound becomes the womb. And the wound for me was disconnection, and the loneliness that I still, there's deep loneliness there at times when I sit with the grief of disconnection, or lost years in that regard. The womb, or the scar of gold that came out of it, was just my wanting to connect people and make people feel included in everything I've done over the years, from fitness to personal development to men's work to breath work to shadow work. Community has been the cornerstone of everything. Someone asked me the other day, my happiest moments. My happiest moments is bringing groups together and just watching the connections happen, and watching people say that every event I've ever ran in any context, people have said, I love meeting like minded people. There's so many like minded people here. And my thing is, we're all the same if you just pull away all the bullshit. And
Yeah,
I know that my heart and what I've been through and where I've felt disconnected has allowed me to create spaces where people can show up. The two things I didn't have growing up were connection and authenticity. I couldn't be
Yeah.
myself and I couldn't be with other people. And now I create spaces where people can show up as themselves and they can be in connection. And again, I think that's where healing occurs. And I can show up as myself. I mean, yeah, it's a good life.
I love that. I love that. Um, I wanted to ask you about your book. Let's
Mm.
say I am a completely newbie into this whole thing, shadow work. Like, what the hell is that? I'm going to speak a little bit like the elders that have been interviewing you on uh, on TV right now about the book. So shadow work, shadow work, shadow work, shadow work. Why won't my shadow leave me the fucking hell alone? Why should somebody even lean in there? Why should someone get your book right now? Tell me more about. I want to know a little bit the origin story of the book.
Yeah.
And also, what is the intent that you infused into the book?
Mm. Yeah. So I mentioned I came into the fitness space probably 15 years ago now, and I was the first guy in Ireland that was doing fitness on a big scale online and stuff like that. And I brought very accessible ideas. I went and this has always been my thing: go and study and work the stuff out, and then bring it back in an accessible way. So I kind of became an accessible entry point for people in fitness. And I always thought that if they come to me for fitness, I'll help them lose some weight. And once they've kind of got where they want to be, then I'll invite them to go to CrossFit or go weightlifting. I'm like the gateway drug to fitness.
Yeah.
And then I got into personal development, and it was the same thing. Like, I'm going to try teach people the basics of personal development and challenging your limiting stories and NLP and all this kind of stuff. And it was the same thing. I want to get you to a certain point. Once you're competent with this stuff, I'm going to encourage you to go to, the more niche or experts. And so I've seen the waves over the last couple of years of fitness became huge, I think globally, but certainly in Ireland. And then personal development became huge. And I feel as these things have developed, it's like the industry matures hopefully with what's happening. And I feel like there's been enough books now about personal development and goal setting and time management. And people recognize that, oh, okay, I can't manage my time. I always say people tend to focus on habits and goals. And those are kind of external things that are driven by your internal experience of life. And so I feel like people are not naive. Like, we know that suffering is a part of life, and at least a part of us knows that. And so what I'm trying to do with this is provide an accessible guide for people to lean toward themselves, to understand why one part of them wants something and then another part's doing the opposite, and to give a practical kind of step-by-step approach. Again, I recognize that shadow work is never linear. It's a spiral. It's dynamic. It's moving. It's unpredictable. But what I'm trying to do is offer a map, I guess, that like things like the hero's journey, where we can offer a map to here's what we experience when we go through change. We have a dark night
Yeah.
of the soul, we have a death and a rebirth, we have trials and tribulations, so that when people go through the challenges that are inevitable in life, there's a bit of context there that can help them to see this path has been walked a million times before. And learning to be with the different aspects of yourself is what allows you to keep pushing through and grow through. So my hope, I say in the start of the book, is to be a gentle guide for people to meet themselves in a new way.
Yeah.
And again, it all comes back to my piece of, yeah, funnily, I was on a podcast maybe 2 years ago, and I don't think the guy even said hello. The opening question was, "Do you love yourself?" I was just like, "Whoa!" and,
It's
and
like,
then
yeah, a
I was like,
little
"Wow."
brutal in the entry.
There was a big breath, and then my honest answer was, it's easy for me to love myself when I'm achieving and when I'm productive and when I am feeling in flow. And I said it's still challenging for me to love myself when I'm not those things. And so I said that's the life for me. At least that's my life's work now. Is like, how do I love all of me? And that's a slow and
Yeah.
ongoing piece of work. But that's what I'm hoping to support people with as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And now, in a way, you kind of answered the next question that I had for you, which is, what are the aspects of yourself that you're still currently learning to bring into your heart, to learn how to be at peace with, to love? And is there more that you want to add to that?
Yeah. No, I'm perfect. Same.
Well,
No, no.
I believe you. There's definitely a realm of like perfection within you. But when we ground ourselves in this 3D realm of the world of duality,
Let's
uh,
not do
the,
that.
oh come
uh,
on, I feel like that's the beauty you have to offer to many people out
yeah,
there.
for
To
sure.
yeah,
The bits I it's the part that's messy in relationship and is afraid of getting it wrong.
Yeah.
That's a part I want to love. That's probably the top part I want to love more. It's the part that it's so I have the part that always wants to learn more, and he's a protector of something behind, which is the part that's
Yeah.
afraid of not getting it right. So I think that's the part I want to love. It's the part that's afraid of not getting it right in relationship or otherwise.
Yeah. I see that. And I want to ask you, well, Pat, what's your relational status at this point? Single, um, in a situationship, in a committed relationship?
Single.
Yeah. And what are you looking for in your next partner?
Are you turning this into a what's the
We never
word?
know, man. We never know.
You've
So,
got you've got the perfect audience for this. What am I looking for? Hmm. I would like someone who's, you know what? I've got a vision that always stands out to me. There was a therapist called John Periakis who set up Core Energetics, who was a spin-off of bioenergetics. And he married a lady called Eva Periakis, who was a channel. So he was a body-based psychotherapist, and she was a channel. And I think
mm,
they met later in life. And I just saw this picture of the two of them at a retreat, hand in hand, and they were older and they were surrounded by youth that were excited to learn from them. My
yeah,
vision for my life is to meet someone that I can grow with personally and professionally, that I can continue my mission as I feel that support with them, and that at the end of our lives, we'll be surrounded by love and by younger people that are influenced by the way that we've lived, and we'll have each other. So it's someone who's passionate about this work, about in whatever format that takes. Someone who supports me and helps me love the parts of myself that I still struggle to love.
yeah.
And yeah, if they're listening, they can message me.
And do you want kids?
I don't think I want kids. Yeah, I don't think I want kids. No.
Yeah. And I also wanted to ask you, um, how do you intend to do this next relationship in a more messy way with an open heart and also practicing holding the part of you that often feels like inadequate when you're not like constantly adding value through, I don't know, performing in any way, shape, or form.
Mm.
How do you want how do you want that shift to happen in this next relationship?
Oh, you don't ask easy questions, David. This is good. this is,
Well,
this
I
is-
think we have a lot of my intention with this show is to have something that would cause people to just stop and think for a second.
yeah,
Wi-
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate. I appreciate it. It's such a contrast to being on the radio and someone saying, "Tell us what is the shadow." Okay, consider this. How am I going to show up in a way that supports the younger part of me that feels he needs to always be in a state of doing? Um, what I do outside of the relational context feels like the first step to actually be making space for that part of me outside of relationship, because that's something that is key as a starting point. And then in the moment, I feel play is the word that's coming, like inviting more of my playfulness and my fun, and
yeah,
yeah, allowing that in the space.
yeah, yeah.
It's almost
So
I remember being at a retreat last year, and there was two things that kind of triggered me, not in an angry way, but maybe shame. And it was a lady told me that I was cute, and someone else called me endearing.
mm,
And it was kind of like the younger part of me almost felt like, no, I'm a man kind of thing. So I don't know if there's
yeah,
a rejection of that kind of more playful, young, childlike part that had to grow up quick, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I see. I see. And so what I want to say is, well, ladies, if you're listening and you are ready to enter a relationship where you no longer want to hide, then my friend Pat is available. How
Is
is
this why
that?
this is an intervention?
Well, no, I don't think it's an intervention. I just, um, maybe a little bit, but not really. It is, I want this thing to be the most just kindred interaction ever. Um, and I think reclaiming aliveness right now,
Mm,
even in this conversation, is part of why we're here.
mm,
The reason why I am so passionate about the practice of shadow work is you can allow yourself to breathe your into who you are. Things have permission to be a little bit less structured, a little bit more messy,
mm,
um, a little bit more alive, and that's the energy that I want to transmit, even
mm.
in our conversations, even in what is going on right now, even in this recording for people who will be listening later. So, yeah, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time in such a busy week to come on the show, to open your heart, to be freaking real, and the things that we talked about, the things that are personal to you about your journey, your work, your passion, your mission. I enjoy that deeply. And yeah, I see you as a man on a mission who, at the same time, doesn't want to get lost in the mission. And I think it is very invaluable in the times that we are going through today. So I wonder if there is any last thing you want to say to people out there tuning into this conversation, knowing that there is quote unquote deeper depth available within themselves that they're afraid of leaning into.
I think the two things I'm focused on the most myself right now, and I'll always share kind of what I'm focused on because it's probably the most resonant. One is people. So if you can get people around you that can reflect back your gold and your shadow, and the shadow in the gold, if you get people who see you and tell you what they see, this is really a key piece. And I see that even in speaking to you today. It's like I feel a lot of joy seeing your face and just getting to connect in this way. And I'm remembering one of the groups we were in, and I think you were giving me feedback, and you were saying, "I just want to grab you and shake you and see you express more joy." And I feel a lot more joy since. Uh, so people is essential. Don't walk this path alone. And the second piece is it's actually around coming into the body like multiple times a day, making it a practice to rather than, I was big on trying to go for big retreats and plant medicine and all this stuff. And you have these big experiences and they can be powerful. But I think getting into the habit of 4, 5, 6 times a day, just stopping for 2 minutes and breathing deep and just checking in with yourself is like a really important tool because it's a practice. And then when the moments come up and the triggers come up and the discomfort comes up, you can go back to that place quickly. So getting used to checking in with yourself multiple times a day. So I'd say emotional health, check in with yourself a couple of times a day, and relational health, be around good people. Those are the two untapped resources when it comes to deep work, I think.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And how can people find you, support your work at the moment? You have the book, Shadow Work. I think it was published officially. It came out yesterday. Is that right? Yeah. So, I mean, for people who will be listening to this podcast in the future, we are now February 28th as we are recording it. The book came out February 27th. Um, you know what? I'm just gonna read the subtitle of the book because I think it is really it speaks appropriately to the conversation we had today, and also some of the big invitations that these times have for people. So I'm just going to read that out loud. I don't remember it word by word, and I have it right there. It is a practical guide to embracing your shadow side, tackling shame, and transforming pain into power. That's really powerful. So, yeah. Um, the book is available, I think, on Amazon and wherever people can access books. And what I would love to ask you is about your breathwork training program. I think you also have a breathwork facilitator program that people can lean into. I want to hear bit more about your personal relationship with breathwork, and
Mm.
also if somebody is interested in like becoming a facilitator in any way, shape, or form, um, how that can help them have the impact that they wish to have out there. Yeah, anything you wish to share about that?
Thank you, man. Yeah, I've been doing breath work for about 10 years in different forms. And for 4 years, I ran a community session once a week online for free. And people kept asking, like, when's there going to be a facilitator training? So it sort of came organically. And I ran the first training last year. It was by far the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. And a friend actually shared with me, and it was I hadn't considered this, but he said I've seen you do 100 different things over the years, and you've always been authentic and passionate, but there's always been a sense that you can bring a certain amount of yourself to it, like a 2D version. And he said this breath work feels like the first time you're bringing all of yourself, because there's coaching, there's shadow work, there's inner child work, there's a bit of fitness work, it's like, wow, this is exactly where I want to be. So my facilitator training is a 6 month training online and then a week in person in the west of Ireland. It's currently full, but we'll go again later in the year. Amazing people from all over the world. It's a real deep dive, and I tell people it's about personal process for 6 months, obviously learning to facilitate, and then also being immersed in a community of amazing people. So, Journey the Breath is the brand, if you will, and yeah, breathwork has just been supportive for me in getting beyond the monkey mind. My mind is such a gift in many ways, and my ADHD head that helps me to learn and navigate and put together interesting ideas. But it's also obviously so important to drop a little bit deeper than that. So I see the body as the unconscious mind, and breathwork has allowed me to tap into that and to process emotion, make space, have deeper insight, and just find calm, I guess. So it's been a gift. I have a bunch of free meditations, breathworks, and yoga nidra tracks on Insight Timer as well. So that's probably a place people could check out.
Yeah. Well, brother, I just want to express my ultimate gratitude, not just for being on this podcast, hardcast. I hope it was really a hardcast for people who will be tuning into this. A conversation that doesn't just stimulate your mind, because I think our minds can be sometimes blown to pieces
Mm.
because of everything that we are exposed to in this digital era. I wanted it to be a conversation where people can come and slow down and also reflect. And you've demonstrated that really well in this interview together. So I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, I don't want it to blow your mind. I hope it blew your heart a little bit more open. And with that, I just want to express my gratitude with the work you're doing in the world, how in service you are, how devoted to that you are, um, how devoted to everything you put your heart into, you actually are. So I value that tremendously. I value this connection that we have built and that we will keep building. Anything, any final words you would like to say?
No, I'm just so happy to be with you, and I respect you greatly. The man you are, the father you are, the partner you are, the teacher you are, the writer you are. I meet people all over the world in different contexts, and I connect with them on Instagram. And then I see them liking your posts. You're blowing up, bro. So I love to see it, and I just have deep admiration for the depth that you bring to life, and the presence and the playfulness too. I really see your playfulness, and I appreciate what that brings out in me. So thank you.
Thank you so much, brother. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was Pat Divilly. I'm inviting you to dive into his universe, dive into his work, and thank you for listening. And I'll see you soon.